I'd like to note in respecting the fact that we are now a state recognizing the non-binary designation as a gender, he and she, we are now merging them so that we are using what my grammar teacher would have had a heart attack over. We are using the phrase they and replacing other designations so that it's a gender neutral designation of they, and we've done that through most of the, basically that's the primary reforms and revisions to the committee rules. So, and I appreciated Senator Monning observing that the chair is she, but in the spirit of gender neutrality for the rules of this committee, it now designates the chair as they. So the world is a different place. My grammar teacher's long gone, and I won't be hearing from her.
Because he disproves their entire foundation of their agenda. That's David Arthur. Here's a man who lived the homosexual, transgender lifestyle a long time. He's come out of it now. David Arthur.
Well, you know, Pastor Steve, you know, I spent 30 plus years trapped in the LGBT movement. Believed I was born that way, made that way, supposed to be that way, that it was normal, natural, that it was okay.
Many of you here right now know what you're seeking and what you're searching. And so what I sought and searched for all my life, that peace, that love, that joy, it's not found in that bottle, it's not found in the club, it's not found on that corner in the back seat of that car. It's found in one place, in Jesus.
And you know, like I was thinking about earlier, I was thinking just how empowered and encouraged I feel right now, knowing that the last time I walked down this street, I was broken, I was lost, I was a transgender, perverted pedophile, prostitute.
I was molested, what the LGBT movement calls recruited. I was recruited into that movement. And then 30 years as a transgender, I was one of them little boys that thought I was meant to be a little girl. I was one of them little boys that truly thought that I was meant to be a girl. I even prayed to God one time as a child saying, Lord, please let me wake up and be a girl. And then the next time I spoke to him, I was shaking my fist in his head up in the sky saying, oh, why did you do this to me? How could you make a mistake?
I want you to begin to tell the story of what happened to you, starting with before you were born.
Right.
Okay, and you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Because that's where your story starts. So, go ahead and start there. And then if you start going down something, because I know your story pretty well, and if you start going down something like, I don't think we need this, I'm going to try and pull you back in.
So the whole thing is like just letting you know, am I being recorded right now?
Yeah.
Oh.
We're rolling.
Oh, okay. Well, of course he's my brother, so we grew up together. I'm the middle son, so, you know, like there was me, my older brother, Butchie, and David was the youngest one.
We decided to go to Canada. and this is before I became pregnant with David, we decided to make the move to Canada. I get away from my friends, and you know, I mean, my friends we used to go and basically party every weekend, work all week, go party for the weekend, you know, get a babysitter, and we went to Canada, and it was good up until we met another couple from the States, and we started getting involved and getting high, and that was a turning point right there. You know, it was like, I don't want you in my life anymore.
Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." God knows the plans that He has for us.
Well, the enemy knows the plans that he has for us as well, because that's why so many people are attacked before they're even born. They're still in the womb. Me, myself, my father took his life. He committed suicide. Who knows if my mother considered abortion or not? Who knows, right?
I remember when I realized I was pregnant, I hadn't said anything to Art yet. That's David's father, Arthur. But I remember I got so mad at him one day, and I did leave. I got myself a little apartment, and he came over, and I said to him, my exact words to him, I don't think I've ever said it to David. My exact words to him was, well, I was pregnant, but I flushed it down the toilet, which I didn't do, you know, but just, that was me, a hurtful person. I wanted to hurt you. If I didn't want you in my life, I wanted to hurt you so you would go away. And that night is when he committed suicide. What he had did is he parked in front of a hotel on Kings Highway in Burnaby, Canada. And he parked in the front, hooked a hose up to his exhaust, and sat down and started writing a letter. A letter which I've never seen, but his sister had told me about the letter. But she also told me that his father had the letter, and whatever was in it, I don't know. But at that point, you know, I realized, you know, I think to the day I die, I will say that this man is dead because of me, of what I did.
And so growing up without a father, I had that natural yearn, that natural desire for male affirmation, for the confirmation of a man in my life that loved me. And I didn't have that. And so I went out looking for that. I would look at the people in my life that did receive male affirmation and male confirmation, my mother, my auntie, my sister, you know, my cousins. And I would figure, how did they get that affirmation? Well, maybe if I start acting like them, maybe I'm supposed to be a girl. And that was the first lie that I accepted. I was supposed to be a girl. And the more feminine I acted, the more attention I received.
The one thing about our family, like none of us really had our father in our lives. So we never had a father figure. Our rock was our mother. She was our mom, our father, our best friend. And today she's my coach. I mean, like I lean on my mom so much.
He was basically with me, his sister, Christine, my friends, which were all women. You know, I mean, he had two older brothers, but two older brothers don't want to be bothered with the little boy. They don't want him with them. You know, they don't want to go with their friends and have to take their little brother.
We kind of like pushed David off to the side a lot, you know, because being the younger brother, he didn't really, you know, come out and like, you know, do the sports with us and stuff like that. And to be really honest with you, I think we all knew that David was a little different than us, and not that we were probably different than David.
He had that feminine way about him, even as a kid. But, you know, I ignore it because he's a kid. He's going to be okay. He's a kid. He's going to be fine.
As he grew up and got older, we started seeing change in David of how he wanted to live his life and how he chose to. It was definitely not acceptable for a very long period of time.
It just so happens that I was receiving the negative attention by men from the LGBT movement that preyed on the fact that I was looking for male affirmation and confirmation, and they molested me. They were what they call recruited me into their movement. And I think I was probably 5 or 6 the first time I was molested. And by the age of 8, 9 years old, I was looking to be molested. Yeah, nobody's in here. I stood in this spot so many times as a child and as an adult, even after I came to Atlantic City and waited for that dirty old man to come along and to look at me and touch me and expose himself to me, and this was it. This was the spot. So yeah. So I came here looking for love as a child from a man. I didn't have that male affirmation, that male confirmation in my life, and I would find it in these public bathrooms or at the bus stop, or sitting on the jitney, which is like a little bus that runs through Atlantic City, sitting on the jitney and just letting old men, and not even old men all the time, sometimes there was younger men, but they would sit next to me and then their hand would brush against my leg, and then it would go further than that. Then I'd get off and I'd follow them somewhere. Usually it was an alleyway, behind a building, behind a dumpster. Sometimes it was in their homes. But it was always to their advantage, basically. I never really received any real love from them. And although it was negative attention, it was just attention. And so we know that dealing with children, it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. Attention is attention when you're dealing with a child. So by the age of 10, 11, I was introduced to alcohol and different drugs. By the age of 13, I was sneaking out of the house at night or supposed to be at my aunt's for a weekend, and I was on the streets of Atlantic City and under the boardwalk and just engaging in sexual activity with anybody and everybody, people from people who were out there on the strip on Pacific Avenue where we went when we were in Atlantic City, looking for that, or whether it was just with people that lived under the boardwalk. It just didn't matter to me. This is Westminster Avenue, but it was better known to us as Snake Alley. And on Snake Alley, what we would do is we would leave the club, or we would leave the stroll, or we would come in from any end or from the boardwalk, and you could come up Snake Alley and you can visit any of these homes or apartments that were here, because the doors were open. It was like a big orgy. It was Sodom and Gomorrah. And so there was drugs and there was sex, and it was random anonymous sex, which was most popular. What was very exciting for me and for many other people was not using protection or contraceptives and having anonymous sex with people. All I wanted to do as a child was engage in sexual activity. That was it. I kind of look back and say I went from being a child to a manipulative little person, because I believe that when a child is molested, or anybody, when anybody is assaulted, sexually assaulted, that there's sexually transmitted demons, STDs, and I believe that those demons, those spirits had attached themselves to me by that point, and that was my only desire, was to engage in sexual activity, and it didn't matter with who or with what, and it just was always with men because I lacked that in my life. I never had that male figure in my life.
He's going to be okay. He's a kid. He's going to be fine. And then, you know, when he hits his teenage years, it's like, no, he's not going to be okay. He's not going to be fine. But I don't think I ever accepted it, you know. I mean, I always told him, I love you. You're my son. I love you. And as I noticed the change in his dress and him letting his hair grow, and I would tell him, you know what? You're not any of these names that you've adopted for yourself, and they're female names. I gave birth to David. David is my son.
I'll say it like this, and it's the very truth. I don't think I ever told my brother David this, but I had no problem because we didn't share the same father. We had different fathers. So I had no problem saying, because, you know, like, this is my little brother, and it was pretty obvious that, you know, he was living a gay life. You know, I had no problem saying, this is my half brother, you know, like, you know, to get me away, or people thinking that maybe I was like him. But, you know, and it didn't bother me saying that either, until, like, you know, when he wanted to transform and all that, it was hard. It was really, really hurt for me to deal with. You know, like I love my brother, but like he, you know, it hurt me. It hurt me bad to see him like that.
America's newest sexual revolution. I don't know what's new about homosexuality. I guess it's been around for centuries and centuries and thousands of years, but they call it the newest sexual revolution.
If every gay person in this state came out to their family, their friends, we would win.
I've been trying to get up here all day for your gay brothers and your gay sisters in jail.
And I don't think I really got a strong, coherent philosophy until the beginning of the 1960s, when, as John D'Amelio has pointed out, there was a distinct change in the temper and tempo of our own movement, sparked in large measure by the advances of the Black Civil Rights Movement.
What is the worst incident that has ever happened to you since you've been gay, as far as being gay?
I guess my parents, you know, them finding out was the worst.
Have you ever been beaten up and raped in jail?
Yes, John, if you can see the bouquets of flowers and the candles at the door of the Ramrod Bar, they're really symbols of the mourning, the feeling of mourning for the two dead and the others who've been shot down here on West Street, as are these little pieces of black armbands that are being handed out to various people in the area, and many of them are wearing it. And while there is a feeling of mourning, there's also a lot of anger, as people seem to be assembling at various other points for a number of demonstrations that have been scheduled, because many of the people here see it not just as an attack on the individuals that happen to be here, but as an attack on the gay community.
But that means that every gay person must come out to their family so their family doesn't vote against them, to their friends if they are indeed their friends, to their relatives, to the people where they work, and to the next door neighbors, nobody else. If that happened across the state, we win.
And suddenly we began to see that the problem of homosexuality, which is what we were organized around, was not our problem, but society's problem. That gay is good in parallel with black is beautiful, that we had to not politely ask for a few crumbs of privilege from the table, but go out and demand rights in the courts and in other forums where we could get them.
Can you tell me what you feel about the homophile movement? I think it's great. I think it's really dynamite. And I think the only way to achieve it is through force and marches like this.
I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation.
Scientists at the National Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta today released the results of a study which shows that the lifestyle of some male homosexuals has triggered an epidemic of a rare form of cancer.
The breaking story just moments ago, the Supreme Court and this landmark ruling, the court making same-sex marriage legal in this country across every state in this nation. Going into today, 37 states in Washington, D.C., 13 states illegal, but those 37 states have same-sex marriage, and now that will change in all 50 states.
So there's a hotel down here on this corner. I don't know if it's still there, or if it's still called the Parker Spruce, but I used to actually live there, work out of there, and work there behind the front desk until I was caught stealing for drugs. All these little nooks and crannies, these little alleyways, they all have very significant meaning emotionally, spiritually. I don't know if I can put it into words, but it's definitely dark. You know, 14, here I am. I come to the big city of Philadelphia from Atlantic City. Now in Atlantic City, I was hanging out with hookers and pimps and drug addicts and prostitutes and just everything. And now here it is on steroids in Philadelphia. It's everything but even worse, even more so. And here I am working the streets, and I mean, 14 years old, all I wanted to do is be the best hooker I could be, getting drunk and getting high every day, every night, not knowing where I was going to wake up the next day, if I was going to wake up the next day.
I realized what a bad move it was to go to Philly. The people there were 10 times worse than the people that I was pulling him away from. I mean, he really got involved in there was times I didn't see him for days and days and days.
My mother, who wasn't a Christian, didn't know Jesus at all. And she said to me, just because of her, you know, that nurturing nature that mothers have, because of that, she said to me, "You will not wear makeup in my home. You will not dress like a woman in my home. I had a son. I did not have a daughter."
That was my turning point to say to him, "Don't you ever come to my house looking like a girl. Don't you ever disrespect me that way.
You are David and you will be David. And if you don't want to be David, you can go." And at 14, I went. Wow. And at 14, I was living on the streets of Philadelphia, dressing like a girl, taking female hormones that I would buy on the street or at the club.
Well, I only met him a few times when he was actually dressed up, and I turned around like I wouldn't even call him my half brother. It was disgusting, and I did not want to see my little brother like that. It was like it's like almost like a person using drugs. The lowest point you can go is putting a needle in your arm. In his lifestyle, that is the lowest form you go. Because if you want to live a gay life and you don't have God, I don't care what you do in your life. I really don't. It's not my life. It's your life. But you're still a man. So, you know, this cross-dressing and stuff, it makes me sick. So I really didn't want nothing to do with David at that point because of that.
I was prostituting my body, and if I wasn't selling it or giving it away, I was trading it for a place to stay or drugs. Because drugs and alcohol were my friend, because it's all I knew to escape all the anger I had. But at the age of 14, I was also HIV positive. And when I went to my peers, the older transgenders and older, we didn't even use the word transgender back then. We were just drag queens or trannies. That was it. And so when I went to my peers and said, I'm HIV positive, what am I gonna do?
They looked at me and said, so what? So are we. And they said, the blankety blank that gave it to you didn't care, so don't you care who you give it to? And the one looked at me and said, take out as many as you can. And actually said, take out as many breeders as you can, and that's what they refer to heterosexuals as breeders. And so there I was, 14, I'm angry. How dare my mother not accept my darkness, my thoughts and feelings? How dare she not accept me? How dare I have to come out here and do what I do? And how dare I have HIV? So I was angry, and I set out to purposely and intentionally infect as many people as I could with HIV. And I have to say that even by the age of 14, there's no way I could even begin to count the number of sexual partners that I had.
I was home. We were in Philly, and I can picture it to today, when the phone rang and I had to. I mean, it was like, what do you say? I all I could say to him is, David, come home, come home. But Mom, come home. That's all I could say to him, is come home. And of course, he's a one-track mind person, you know. I think he just turned bitter to the point where he didn't care. He was going to continue doing what he was doing. He didn't care. Somebody gave it to me, I'm going to give it to somebody. That mindset.
And I had a mission, and I was going to go out, and I was going to purposely and intentionally infect as many people as I possibly could with HIV. And for me, it was more of a game because I looked like a woman. And so the men that came to visit me had wives and girlfriends at home. They had families and children, and they were from 19 and 20 years old to 88 years old. And there were pastors, there were church folks, there were drug dealers, it didn't matter. Because the enemy, sin is not a respecter of persons. So there was a wide range of people and ages, and every one of them, I started thinking, not only am I going to get him, I'm going to get his wife. Growing up in this movement, from 14 on, I watched children
be seduced and lured in with drugs, alcohol, material things, video games, jewelry, money, anything. And then they're used up, they're passed around, they're profited off of, and then when they're no more good, they're just tossed out like garbage. And then they become the ones who grow up and start recruiting, molesting children. So every night and every day, this was the stroll. This was the prostitution stroll, especially at night. At night, all you have is homosexuals and drug addicts.
What is the stroll? Explain what
the stroll is where all of the prostitutes go to sell their bodies. That's what the stroll is. And even the drug addicts that even the drug addicts that never engaged in homosexuality in their lives, once they become drug addicts, they'll do anything for that drug, include sell their body. And sometimes for just a couple dollars. That's why crack rock is so cheap, because people will give their bodies up for it for just a few dollars. And so this whole area is, once nightfall comes, this is the stroll.
I remember one time, he said, he came over and he said to me, he said, "Mommy, still want to take you out to lunch." I said, "Well, come on, let's go." And he had this sweatshirt on and a pair of sweatpants. His hair was long, but he had it up, tied up. And the hair tied up bothered me. But I didn't say anything. And we went to lunch, and it was a restaurant. They had a balcony outside in the back that overlooked the water. And it was gorgeous, it was beautiful. But we were sitting there, and the waitress came up, and she took my order, and she looked at David, and she said, "And what about you, ma'am? What will you have?" And I was like, did she just say ma'am? And I wanted to say something, and I thought no, because you know what? It's going to embarrass him. It really is going to embarrass him, because I was going to say, "Excuse me, this is my son." But I didn't, and I don't think I should have either. You know, I think I would have put him on the spot to where he would have been embarrassed or whatever. But that was the point. That was the point where I realized he's in trouble. He's in trouble.
I respected my mom. I loved my mom. I was angry with my mom that she wouldn't accept, my death style. But I can say this, that I did respect her decision, because even in the years that I lived as a woman, breasts and everything, when I went to visit my mom, or when I went to my mom's house, I would put a baggy sweatshirt on, sweatpants, pull my hair back, not wear any makeup. I still looked like a girl, but I didn't want to flaunt it to my mom, because I knew that she didn't accept it and that she didn't embrace it. And I knew that it actually hurt her, because the words that she said to me had always stuck with me. I had a son, I didn't have a daughter. I named you David. I'll never call you anything other than that.
I was mad. I wasn't hurt. I was mad. I was mad and embarrassed. And I don't know which I felt stronger, anger or embarrassment.
If he just dressed like a man, right, and which wouldn't have been a surprise, he said, "Lee, I'm gay." I was like, "Okay, I know." You know, I think I would have accepted it a little bit better.
At that point on is when I started seeing the two extremes that we see in society today. And the one extreme was, God hates fags, you're going to hell, you're going to burn. And the other extreme was, oh, don't worry about it, honey, because God don't make no mistakes, and he created you that way.
How do I say to him, this is so wrong? How do I say that to him when I realize, hey, this kid is in trouble. He really thinks he's a girl. And then I get this in conversation that he's taken these injections of, I forget what it is that they inject themselves with to make their faces fatter.
I had free-floating silicone injected into my face, and when I did this, it's not done by a doctor. It's done by people you meet like in the club or on the street, and they do it in their house or in a hotel room. And a lot of the times, the only reason I was comfortable is because I knew the person doing mine, and I knew exactly what kind of silicone they were actually getting. But there's so many times out there where people are found dead in hotel rooms because these other people are going and injecting them with Crisco and all kinds of other stuff because they can't get their hands on the real silicone.
I mean, here I am, best friends with two gay girls, and how do I tell my son, well, you know what, this is wrong, we need to really sit down and talk? How do I do that? I can't do that. I couldn't do that. I would, and not that I felt like I would be a hypocrite, but it would be like, these are my best friends. And you know, it took me a long time, and I think even to this day, I know God, I read the Bible every day. It takes me right up to today, where if David hadn't embraced God, I don't think to this day I would have still ever said, you're wrong, you shouldn't be doing this is wrong.
Excuse me, sir, there's a young man in here.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
I can call the police if you'd like me to. You need to settle down.
You need to settle down and mind your business, okay? Ma'am, once again, ma'am.
I said both of you.
No, you said sir. Once again, it's ma'am. I need your corporate number because I'm going to call them and talk about how it's misgendered several times in this store.
I apologize for that.
I need your corporate number now.
I can get it for you. It's not a problem.
Get it for me now.
I can do that. I'm going to ask you to calm down and stop cussing.
Give me your corporate number. Well, I'm going to ask you for the 5th time to stop calling me a man, because quite clearly I am not.
I have physically hurt people and attacked people just to prove to them how happy I was. But that just tells me that I was not happy. You know, I know that everybody would have said, oh yeah, that I was the, you know, most content, secure person, even as I grew into that movement, because I would have defended it, because that spirit doesn't come alone. Homosexuality never comes alone. It comes with pride and anger and deception and perversion and all kinds of a slew of other things. I call it legion every time I refer to homosexuality. And even as we come down here, how you doing?
Hey.
Can I talk to you for a minute?
You mind being on camera? I won't film you if you won't, but I'm filming him.
Just me? Okay. I'm David. And you are? Mel? Can I call you just Mel? Okay. Well, I used to be out here.
okay? I'm what they call legendary out here, okay? You ever heard of Paige Ebony? That's me. Well, that used to be me. It's not me anymore.
I was miserable, you know, and I don't think that I would have ever admitted it while I lived in it, because that would have entailed me saying I was wrong. And no, none of us want to be wrong. We don't want to admit that we're wrong, that we're miserable. So we put on the facade, we put on the smile, you know, and I didn't just live a lie, I became a lie. I mean, I was a lie 24 hours a day. Sleeping, awake, it didn't matter. I was a lie. I was a man that looked like a woman, that lived as a woman.
And I'm coming to you, you know, because I care. That's why I'm here. I'm here right now because my heart is breaking for this place that used to have me enveloped. It used to have me in bondage. And I know the bondage. You know what I'm saying? So all of the things that we go through as children, you know, being molested into this movement, you know it, I know it. Okay? And then what we start getting away from who God created us to be and becoming another person because we don't want to deal with who we are.
I was a man that would walk down the street, and because just looking like a woman dressed very provocatively wasn't enough attention, when I did get attention, I would say I'm a man because I wanted more attention.
I'm going to give you one of my books before I leave, okay? Because I want you to know that there are people out there that have come out of this, okay? And trust me, some would have said I was too far gone. Some would have said that I was too far gone, that there was no hope for me, that I was who I was. And I know that you can relate to what I'm going to say right now. But all that I was looking for, all that I was searching for, all that I was seeking, and all the places that I was looking for it at, it wasn't there. I never found it. And every time I thought I found a sliver of it, that dream was crushed real quick. And I went back on the search.
And that's what being in that death style and in that movement is all about. It's about being a spectacle, about receiving attention, because they lack the confirmation and the love and the joy and the peace, and they're always looking for it. And the more they look for it, the worse it gets for them, because you're never satisfied with your sin. So you're never satisfied with just drinking. So whatever thrill you got from just drinking, or just having turning tricks or prostituting, whatever thrill you got from that, eventually you don't get that thrill anymore. And so you take it darker and you take it deeper and you do more extreme things.
I went this far, and here I am, by God's good grace. You know, I used to be out here working every night, every day. I lived on South Street. I would come out here in the daytime, I'd come out here at nighttime. And even though I had my ads running in the papers and the magazines, and I could have had the clients come into my house, I still was drawn to the street, drawn to the perversion of it, drawn to the hope that I might find that love or that peace, that happiness that I was looking for. And I never found it. You know, in that movement, it's almost unheard of if you don't get involved in other areas like the bondage, the discipline, the sadomasochism, the pedophilia, the drugs, the alcohol. It's all a part of your everyday activity. And that's why it's like recently I'm starting to see that it's not just about homosexuality or pedophilia. It's about the whole perversion. You know, we're born into sin and shaped in iniquity, and iniquity means perversion. And so that's how we're shaped. We're shaped in perversion, and that's what's taken over the society today, is this perversion. The prostitution aspect of it is just something that we do.
you know, because we're drawn to engage in that perversion and that sexual activity anyway. So when I came to Philadelphia, I was 14. Everyone was like, well, if you're going to do it, why not get paid for it? You know, so that's just another aspect of it. What I want you to understand is that this isn't who God created you to be. And that's coming from a heart. That's coming from a heart that cares, because I know, because I've been through it. I was about 2 months, a month or two away from getting my first surgical procedure, which would have been castration. And I was sitting on a blanket with 2 transgenders that had already had the operation, and we were just laughing and talking and having a good old time, and all of a sudden both of their faces just went blank, real serious, and they looked at me and they said, "Don't do it." And I was like, "Well, what are you talking about?" And the one said, "All my life I felt like if I could just be a woman, I would find peace and joy and finally be happy. Now that I'm legally and medically female, I'm more miserable now than I'd ever been." And the other one looked at me and said, "I think about taking my life several times a day, every day. Don't do it." And then it's like the light went back on and the smiles came back on, and it was like it never happened, but it happened because I know it happened. But we didn't talk about it or anything, and it was... So I know now that if the Lord can speak through an ass, he can speak through anybody. And that's what he did. And he allowed them to express their true feeling. That true feeling that we hide with the facade, that, you know, we can't admit are wrong. And he allowed them to express that to me because he didn't want me to go forth with that operation. And everything that I was ever searching for, I never found it until Jesus rescued me. That was it. Because I'm telling you where this death style, I can't call it a lifestyle, I'm sorry, but this death style leads exactly to that, to death. See, anything that's outside of Jesus, anything that's sinful, anything that's wrong, leads to death. So if it's apart from Jesus, it's a death style. It's not just homosexuality is just one death style, but so is lying and cheating and thieving and adultery. They're all death styles. Sin is a death style.
In 2015, he became an outspoken voice for the transgender community. A year later, he was praised for being the first American to be legally recognized as what they call non-binary. Jamie Shoup was the darling of the LGBTQ world. Instead of recognizing, though, a desperate cry for help, doctors, judges, and activists used him to advance their cause, he says. They took advantage of his vulnerability as an Army veteran suffering from PTSD to break barriers. Shoup will never be the same. Joining me now to tell his story, and it's shocking, is Jamie Shoup himself. Jamie, thank you for being here. It takes a lot of courage to be here. You say the transgender community has not only turned their backs on you, but are now attacking you? What happened?
That's correct, Laura. The minute you denounce anything transgenderism was, you're automatically an outcast.
But it wasn't until I rediscovered who I was created to be in Jesus. Yeah, you know that name, that powerful name of Jesus. That is when I figured and found out who I truly was.
My second time in prison, I'm a man, and I was in a man's prison, and I had breasts, and I was on the rec yard because it's all about attention. So I'm on the rec yard of prison around all these men, and I'm cheerleading for the guys playing basketball. And there was a correctional officer, and I seen him standing across the rec yard, and he's looking. And I'm thinking, he's gonna be a problem. And he says, "Come here." And I walked up to him, and actually I bounced up to him. And I was like, yes. And he said, what's your name? I said, Paige. And he said, no, that's a girl's name. What's the name your mama gave you? I said, David. He said, well, David, do you know that God didn't create you to be this way? I was offended. I was hurt. I was angry. I thought he was a hater. And I said to him arrogantly and pridefully, of course, I said, of course he did. Look at me, I do this well. And he said, no, he said, he didn't even intend for you to look like this. And I'm going to tell you this every day, David. And he did. He did. Hallelujah. And he told me and I praise God for him. Because he told me every day. And if he didn't work on the rec yard or he didn't work in my dorm, he would call the officers and say, would you send him over to my dorm? And I would have to walk clear across the compound. And I'd walk into his dorm and he'd say, God didn't create you to be that way. Now go on back to your dorm. And I'd have to walk clear back across the compound. It only took me a few weeks to actually start looking for Bishop. We called him Bishop. I don't remember his name, but we all called him Bishop. Even the officers called him Bishop because he treated everybody the same. He didn't treat anybody different. He treated the inmates the same as he treated his co-workers. And I started looking for Bishop on the compound. And I just remember having conversations with him and how he would tell me, and he'd say things to me like, David, when you get saved, your testimony is going to be able to help so many people from so many different walks of life. And I'd blow it off. And then at the same period, my mom sent me a Bible. And all I ever read was Psalms because it was supposed to be inspirational. And I didn't find it very inspirational. But that's because I didn't have the Spirit to reveal what the word was to me. But I know now, and I knew then, that I wanted to talk to Bishop because I knew that Bishop was the first man in my entire life. In 37 years, 30-something years, that I'd ever encountered, ever met, or stood before that truly and purely loved me.
David wasn't one to say to you, yeah, I'm living the wrong kind of life. I don't know why I'm doing this. He's not one to say that. He wasn't at that time, especially. He was not going to tell anybody, whether it be Bishop or me or anybody else, that he was wrong.
When I stood before him and I would listen to him, and all he wanted me to do is understand that he loved me and he wanted me to know this truth that he had for me. Now he definitely planted a seed and he watered it every chance he got. So when I got out of prison, I remember sitting on a brick wall about a week before I got out of prison, and I was in deep thought, and a homosexual came up to me and says, "What's the matter with you?" I said, I've been with thousands, literally thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of men and boys in my life. I said, but all these men, I said, I've never given one man a chance. And he said, who? I said, Jesus. And he said, oh, you crazy, because you're getting ready to go home. And he walked away. And I'd like to say that I got out of prison and that everything was biscuits and gravy and I was this wonderful man of God, but it didn't work like that. And like a dog, I returned to my vomit. But there was a difference. because I no longer felt comfortable putting on makeup. I no longer felt comfortable putting on women's clothing. Now I had a real issue because now I was a man with breasts and I didn't want to be a woman. And so I like to look back at it now and say, okay, Bishop planted the seed, he watered it every chance he got, and God started to cause an increase, but I had to learn how to be David again. And so I was just David. I was just David with breasts. And I was doing the same things that I was doing before, just without the makeup. By 2008, I was stricken down with severe osteoporosis. I couldn't stand up straight, couldn't walk without a walker. My bone density was almost gone from all the hormones that I had taken, all the trauma that I had put my body through.
And here I was in this excruciating pain, hunched over, couldn't stand up straight, dragging myself around on a walker. But yet, that didn't even stop me from trying to fulfill the lusts of my flesh. That didn't stop me from going to the nightclubs, to the casinos, to the sex parties, to the parks, to the rest stops. It didn't stop me. And in 2009, I was stricken down with full-blown AIDS.
Well, it wasn't a surprise at all, because from my understanding, it's from, either if you share needles or you live in homosexuality world, that the AIDS is right behind it.
I had no immune system. My T cells, if anybody knows what that is, went from 11 to 0. My viral load was in the hundreds of thousands and then went into the millions. The virus had taken over my body.
An infection in his brain. He went through scans and stuff, and that's when Jean, I called her Jean, she was her doctor, his doctor, and she said to me, she says, brace yourself, he has an infection in his brain. I don't think it's gonna be healed.
Boils popping out all over my body from the infections trying to fight their way out. And the doctor said, you don't even have to take the HIV medicine anymore because it can't help you, you won't survive. And so they put a hospital bed in my bedroom at home and sent me home to die. And told my mom to make my arrangements, of which she could never bring herself to do.
And my mother also got mad at me a lot because I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about David. My thing was just to escape from the conversation was, Mom, he chose his road, not me. I got my own road that I chose. And my consequences for my road, one day they'll be there. There's things I accepted in life as your walk of life, but that was one thing that I didn't accept.
Somebody who has something wrong with them that is controlled by medication, that's what they were doing, was controlling it, but it wasn't healing him. And then you saw, we weren't educated in what this is. We had no education. All we knew is people were dying from it.
He was sick. He was dying, and that's another miracle. He was on so much medication that it was crazy.
I was on OxyContin, oxycodone, hydrocodone, street drugs. I was taking anything I could for the pain, and it wasn't touching the pain.
Oh God, I can't even remember all the drugs. The bottles of pills and still the pain. And I remember his older brother saying, Mom, I thought David was pretending with the pain. And I just looked at him. I was like, are you serious? He says, no. He says, but I know. He says, I know that it's real. He says, he cried. He went to move. He asked me to help him sit up in the bed. He had a hospital bed in the house. Sit up in the bed, just help him move, sit up, and he was crying in pain.
When I found out he was sick, I already accepted whatever he was in his life. He's still my brother. You know what I mean? So it was like, wow, now I'm going to lose my brother to AIDS.
Bobby Campbell of San Francisco and Billy Walker of New York both suffer from a mysterious, newly discovered disease, which affects mostly homosexual men, but has also been found in heterosexual men and women. The condition severely weakens the body's ability to fight disease. Many victims get a rare form of cancer called Kaposi sarcoma. Others get an infection known as pneumocystis pneumonia. Researchers know of 413 people who have contracted the condition in the past year. 1/3 have died and none have been cured.
Death didn't scare me. It was living with this for a long time. That's more frightening than death.
Investigators have examined the habits of homosexuals for clues.
I was in the fast lane at one time in terms of the way that I lived my life, and now I'm not.
The best guess is that some infectious agent is causing it. Today, researchers here at the National Centers for Disease Control said they had found several cases where people who had been sex partners both had the condition. The scientists say this probably means they are dealing with some new, deadly, sexually transmitted disease.
Oh, most people were going, oh my God, he's got AIDS, don't touch me, don't come near me, don't come to my house. You know, I mean, that people were afraid, they were scared, and rightly so. Nobody knew what it was, you know? You didn't know how you got it. I mean, they did know that, you know, sex was a big thing, but who knows? If I touched you, am I going to get it? You know, I mean, nobody knew.
The total sickness that he had, I knew it was there, but I stayed away. And because I couldn't look at him, you know, and know that like what he's going through in his life.
When I laid in this hospital bed, I knew two things. I knew, one, that I was afraid to die. But I knew that I was afraid to die because I didn't want to go to hell.
I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to go to hell. When somebody says that, who has never had any love for reading the Bible, or never felt any need to read the Bible, and somebody says, I don't want to go to hell. I don't care if I die, but I don't want to go to hell. I'm like, wow.
I knew at that moment that I was on my way to hell. Just because of who and what I was and had become and had done. And I had that Bible sitting on my nightstand that my mom sent me in prison. And I never picked it up. I used it as a coaster, actually, for most of the time. And but I reached over and I picked it up. The very first verse I read was Romans 1:27. And it said, men, burning in lust for one another, giving up the natural use of the woman. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I said, oh God, not only am I living sinfully, but I'm living unnaturally. And I started thinking, well, actually, it's not that I started thinking, I actually heard Bishop in my head saying, see, David, I told you God didn't create you to be that way. So from that moment on, I just started diving into the Word, absorbing all that I could absorb. You know, there's a lot of truths, absolutes, that He has revealed to me through the Word. And as I started absorbing this Word, I noticed how detailed and how precise it was. And in my confession to Him, I wanted to be just as detailed and just as precise. And so I spent weeks in repentance or confession, and I knew I was talking to a God and telling God, this God that knew everything, I was telling Him everything He already knew, but I knew that I had to do it because transparency is the key. And I knew that if I spoke it, it wouldn't hold power over me any longer. I've repented for weeks. I had a lot to repent of. But I prayed and I believed and I gave it to Him and I called upon Him. I said, Jesus, please.
Jesus, please. I didn't want him to heal me. And so I spoke it all to him. And in this period, people would contact me or come to see me, call me. And I would tell them all the time, don't ever accept this again in anyone's life, because what you've done with me is you've loved me to death. Literally, you loved me to hell by not, by accepting my death style, by accepting this lie. Because it's not a lifestyle, it's a death style. It is in direct opposition to God. Homosexuality is not the opposite of heterosexuality. The opposite of homosexuality is redeemed, justified, freed from the bondage of sin. So I woke up one morning more confused than ever because I was in so much pain. I was confused because I had this peace. I had a joy in my heart. And I knew at that very moment that I wasn't afraid to die any longer, because I knew at that very moment that I wasn't going to hell. That was my moment of grace. And I called out to God. I said, oh, Lord Jesus, I'm ready. Please take me home. Please take me home. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to look like this. I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to be. I just don't want to be. Please take me home. And I said, but Lord, I have one request. That through my death, you can be glorified. That through my death, somebody will come to know you. And selfishly, I was thinking of my mom. And within a few days, I started getting up out of bed.
To watch him, one by one, throw them pill bottles away, and watch him stand up and walk.
And then I'm walking around the house, and everyone's looking at me like, they're like, this is his last burst of energy. He's going any minute now.
And I'm saying to him, David, you sure you're okay? This is like such a change. Are you sure you can go by yourself? Are you sure you're okay? You want me to go with you? No, Mom, I'm okay. I can go by myself. It's like, it took me a while to actually, and I'm not going to use the word accept, but it took me a while to understand that he's getting better. He's getting better. He's not that sick, hurting person suffering in his bed waiting to die. He's not that person anymore.
First I was holding a cane and standing up straight, and then no cane, and walking around the house and doing things for myself. Had blood work done, went into the doctor's office, nurse practitioner. David, Dr. Z's not coming in this office. I said, well, why not? Well, because he doesn't have a scientific explanation for what's going on with you. And I'm, well, what's going on with me? And she says, now my nurse practitioner was a Christian, and she says, David, we've never seen a viral load as high as yours in this office. Only in textbooks have we seen it. But we've never heard of a viral load as high as yours with a CD4 count at 0, which is your T cells, your good cells, your immune system at 0 of surviving. She said, but the medical miracle
is the fact that you're undetectable right now. She says, and that's completely unheard of. I said, well, what does this mean, undetectable? She said, well, it means that we can't detect the virus in your system. I said, does that mean I'm negative? She said, oh, no. One's positive, always positive. I said, well, what happened to God?
It's like the miracles that happen in his life. It's like you got to be like really closed-minded not to believe of God's powerful work.
I was also diagnosed with depression and major chronic depression, anxiety, bipolar, sleeping disorders, because I was told that they were diseases. But as soon as I came out of the world, as soon as I was no longer a part of this world, I knew that I didn't have any of those things because they're not diseases, that they were just symptoms of being in the world. They were results of being a part of this world. And so once I came out of the world, I put all that stuff down. Would they say, well, are you still attracted to men? No, I'm not attracted to men, but I have a temptation. But that temptation or that affliction is my friend. Because I struggle, but I don't struggle with the struggle. Because I'm safe, I'm secure, and I'm content in the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross. You see, I was ultra feminine. But it was Jesus that taught me how to be a man. It was the word that showed me how to be a man, what masculinity was, and it wasn't about scratching yourself and yelling football and hoorah. It was about representing Jesus and carrying yourself as Jesus would. I've had people come to me and say, well, I've given my life to Christ and I still have AIDS, or so what? Because even if I had full-blown AIDS right now, covered in lesions, if I had cancer, if I had one leg, no arms, paraplegic, a vegetable, I'm not what I was. And I have the truth.
Here David was, a younger brother, a kid that was dying in my eyes, going nowhere, right? Just grew and blossomed like this beautiful flower. And if it wasn't for my little brother, I don't even know where my mother would be today.
I remember in Jersey saying to him, "Want to go to church with me?" "What do I want to go to church for, Mom?" "For what? What do I want to go to church for?" "Well, you don't know until you get there." And even then, I didn't have God in my life. Yeah, I was going to church, but I didn't have God in my life. The day that he said, he picked up the Bible and started reading it and started preaching to me, I was like, when I tell you blown away, I'm telling you blown away. I have 4 kids. I would never, you could have said to me, I'm telling you, this is going to happen when David turns this age. David's going to go to God. God, he's going to embrace God with everything he has. And I would have laughed in your face. I mean, I think Lee probably told you the same thing. He tells me all the time, "Mom, I'm so amazed at David. I'm so amazed."
He's living proof of, like, whatever you're going through in your life, right? That God can change it. And you can't just, he's proven to me that you can't just sit there and pray today and expect tomorrow for God to work miracles. You know, he's proven to me that it's studying of his word, acknowledging his word, obeying his laws, and living it at a daily basis. It's incredible. He's I love him. I like, he brings tears in my eyes, Butchie's eyes, everybody's eyes, and it's tears of joy, you know. And I love you, brother. You know that.
I'm no longer embracing the lie of the lgbTQ movement. As a matter of fact, my focus is to expose them, expose their deep, dark, hidden secrets, and let society know that this movement is preying on your children and your grandchildren. I can't say it enough.
All right, get your phone out. Go to savejames.com and follow along with this. You're not going to believe half this. You're going to have to check it out. 6 years and 10 months ago, the good Lord gave me 2 sons. I named them James and Jude after the brothers of Jesus. They were baptized and dedicated to a life in Christ. My ex-wife, Ann Georgelis, she's a pediatrician in Capel, Texas, divorced me. She got primary custody of the children. And starting around the age of 2, she began saying that James was really a girl. My son started telling me that he had a girl's brain in a boy's body. When he got older, Ann Georgelis registered my son James in school in the Capel School District, Pinkerton Elementary. He's known there by a fake girl named Luna. He uses the girl's bathroom. He wears a dress. All of his authority figures tell him he's a girl, except me. Yet James has never, not once, ever, come to me and presented it to himself as a girl. He's always a boy with me. He's a normal, roughhousing boy. In fact, his favorite activity is wrestling and boxing, and he's a darn good boxer, I'll tell you that. Now, Ann Georgelis also enrolled James when he was 5 years old into a clinic, the Genesis Clinic, and they do sex change operations on children in Dallas, Texas. I see some of you don't believe that. Get your phones out. GENECIS Clinic in Dallas, Texas, and you'll see pictures of children they have done sex change surgeries on. He's on something called the Dutch Protocol, and it's a 3-step walk to hell. Here's how it works. Number 1, they socially transition the child. They've already done that to my son. He's presented as a girl to the world when he's with his mother, although he's always a boy with me. Number 2, they suppress puberty with extremely strong hormone drugs that castrate males, make them infertile, and halt the growth of their sexual organs. That can happen as early as 8 years old. My son's got about 2 years, and I'm struggling to make this practice illegal in the state of Texas. As early as 15, he can be surgically transitioned. They will remove his penis, create a fake vagina. He will be condemned to a life of banishment, despair, and up to, depending on the stats you look at, up to 60% of post-op transsexuals commit suicide. That's the life Ann Georgelis has in mind for my son. I've resisted it with everything I have, all my money, all my time, everything. So she went to court. She filed a motion to effectively terminate my parental rights. Here's what she's asked the court to do. Jail me if I say James is a boy or present him as a boy to any of you. To jail me if I refuse to attend transgender ideology education classes, or if I fail to satisfy the transgender instructor of that class. And I assure you, I would never satisfy such an instructor. Jail me if I use male pronouns for my son, or allow others to do so. She also asked the court to jail me if I don't pay for all this, because currently in the state of Texas, that's all considered medical child support, and I'll go to prison for it. I'm currently under court orders, temporary orders, and injunction from the court that prevents me from presenting my son as a boy to anybody who's ever known him as a girl. They have also issued prior restraints on my parental speech, and everyone here should know prior restraints on speech are totally unconstitutional. The federal courts are virtually unanimous, going all the way back to the founding of this country on that. I cannot try to convince my son that he is a boy. Now that means I've been unable to teach him traditional Christian teachings on sexuality and gender, and I can't let him go to Sunday school because in my church, pretty much like yours, we teach this as just men and women. Now they want to keep all this secret. They've tried to use gag orders on me. They've tried to seal the court records. They've enacted those prior restraints. Psychologists have threatened me with losing my child if I dare to go public with this and tell you my child's real name is James instead of Luna. But you need to know what's happening in the darkness. This is happening in family courts all over the state now. My son's just the tip of the spear. So we need to fight this. And they're coming for my son, that's for sure. It won't be long before they're coming for your children.
I think that Anyone can do what they want in life. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If you want to be a drag queen and your parents don't let you, you need new parents. If you want to be a drag queen and your friends don't let you, you need new friends.
First and foremost, Sacramento is out of control. It is out of control because it seems to think that it can indoctrinate our children with their leftist agenda.
Yes, some parents are upset with the way that the schools are teaching sex ed, and they're taking their students out of the classroom. Good evening, I'm Dan Kleckner.
And I'm Stephanie Vigil. The grassroots movement Sex Ed Sit Out is focusing on public school education of sexual education.
To have adults talk to sixth graders about sexual pleasure, too much.
Parents are not happy with the Rockland Charter School Academy for having transgender discussions in a kindergarten class.
It's very graphic depictions of sexual activity, including anal, oral, and vaginal sex. It recommends a whole adult catalog of sexual activities for young children. There's actually links to pornography in the curriculum.
This morning when I woke up, there was a news story out of Virginia that read, Orgasm Ed, oral, anal, and sex toys in 9th grade girls' family life class.
To the parents and taxpayers in the room watching, you need to understand over the last few days, there has been major drama-rama within the ranks of the school board, the employees, and the school leadership. They don't want you to know what's going on.
We've been completely silenced by the left. You know, as you said, I was previously a transgender media darling, and now the New York Times doesn't want to talk about me anymore or even acknowledge that I exist because I no longer support this stuff. Yes, the conservatives are to be commended for what they're doing to help us, to help children.
Alphabet Man, tearing down the strongholds, exposing the darkness, wrecking the enemy's plans. Endurance till the end. It's time for the Alphabet Man Live.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is the day the Lord has made. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for your encouragement. I'm trying to do all that I can to be a good Christian. And I start going to church, and I start getting my testimony suppressed. And I'm told, well, you can come here, but don't talk about that. And then when I find some conservative churches, they say, well, you can come and talk about that, but let's not talk about the pedophilia. Let's just say you were healed of AIDS and healed of homosexuality, but let's not compare the two because we don't want to offend anybody. Pedophilia. Just straight up in your face, bold pedophilia. MAPS, minor attracted persons. Children can decide their gender. And so within 5 years, they're going to be able to decide their sex partner, and their sex partner's age isn't going to matter. And so what that means is, because see, the lgbTQ movement has already put in their federal and state demands, has already put that they want people who are charged with sex crimes that shouldn't have been deemed a crime to be released and have those records expunged. And I'm not saying that every single person, every single homosexual is a pedophile. What I'm saying is that every single homosexual is a victim of the pedophile movement because they are one and the same. And so whether they were just victimized or a victimizer, there's a connection there. Once they lay the foundation, because that's it, it's for the pedophile movement to rise up. That's what it's all about. It's about the children. It's always been about the children. If they don't get them in the womb with abortion, then they're going to get them as children right after they come out of the womb. So if I'm not allowed to compare the two movements because they're the same movement. And to prove
that they're the same movement is that where are they right now? They're everywhere youth gather. They're in the foster care system, they're in your schools. If you look up After the Ball, which is a book, and it's labeled as the homosexual Bible, because it talks about desensitizing America. There's an article called Overhauling of Straight America, which is their entire agenda on how to desensitize America. And it started of course, in the 50s. Then there's the Homosexual Manifesto. So the Homosexual Manifesto was written in 1987. As we go through this, I'm going to be commenting because I want everybody to know that how they have actually accomplished this agenda, how they have actually already done this. This is done. This is a done deal. And unless we know that this is a done deal and we accept it and realize it, we're not going to grasp the concept of what is coming for our children and our grandchildren. Not what is coming, but what has gotten here and what has a hold of them and what is preying on them at this very moment. The Homosexual Manifesto lays out their agenda in black and white, and it starts off, the very first line in the Homosexual Manifesto says, "We will sodomize your sons," emblems of your feeble masculinity. And then it ends with, "Tremble, hetero swine, when we stand before you without our masks." They're teaching right now in California, Governor Brown has them teaching all school-age children must watch homosexual sex. They must watch it. So they're watching porn because they don't have to watch heterosexual sex, all ages, but homosexual sex. And when asked why, he said because they need to know. Massachusetts, they were teaching third graders about oral and anal sex. Why do they need to know? Because they need to know. This is what this movement does. This movement infiltrates and brainwashes children. It grooms children.
I am a school teacher, currently teaching kindergarten. Oh, I'm also a drag performer. Named Facelift. So Drag Queen Story Time, it's just a wonderful time for me to be able to bring my love of working with kids with my performance. I've always been very sort of creative and dramatic. I don't know, there's just something that's kind of magical in the transformation. I know I'm still me. Ultimately, my kids, they influence a lot of the style of how Faye has evolved over the last 10 years. The music that I choose, the sort of brightness of the colors of the costumes I wear. So if anything, the kids have inspired her more than I would say anything else.
We the people can decide what we teach our kids when it comes to sex, when it comes to relationships. It is not the job of the Board of Education.
To send them to websites where they can learn to ask for consent in a sexy way, not appropriate.
The kindergartners came home very confused about whether or not you can pick your gender, whether or not they really were a boy or a girl.
Parents, do you want your children in kindergarten to hear about same-sex marriage under the guise of families? No.
Hi, my name is Ellen Pontiff. I'm actually going to be one of the drag queens reading for Drag Queen Story Time. So apparently to a lot of people in this room, I'm the big boogeyman. And as you can see, I'm probably the most unintimidating person you've ever seen in your entire life. I am not here to obviously change anyone's views about me, but I'm here to let you know that this event is something that's going to be very beautiful. And for the children and the people that support it are going to realize that this is going to be the grooming of the next generation. We are trying to groom the next generation to not see the way that they just did. And just because I said that, you heard the little plur of people behind me. It's disgusting. We are trying to teach people to be tolerable, to be patient, to be loving.
Within 5 years, when this pedophile movement is right where the LGBTP movement is right now,
And these men are taking little boys and little girls, and these women are taking little boys and little girls, because it happens both ways. There won't be any sex offender registry because pedophilia won't be illegal.
Sex with objects in high school? Too much.
Parents, do you want your children in 5th grade to hear about gonorrhea and syphilis? No.
There won't be any more law against pedophilia. You know, just like there's no more law against sodomy because it's been changed.
Feminizing hormone therapy. Feminizing hormone therapy is an option that can help people who are transgender fulfill their affirmed feminine gender identity and feel more comfortable in their bodies. But, like other medical treatments, there are benefits and risks. What is feminizing hormone therapy? Feminizing hormone therapy changes the levels of sex hormones in the body. Sex hormones are the chemical messengers in the body that regulate the development of sex characteristics, such as hair growth, fat distribution, and muscle mass. The most common medicines used are estrogen and spironolactone.
8 years old, they can get on puberty blockers and hormones without parental consent. And if the parent says, no, my child, not my child, the state will say, well, your child either goes on these puberty blockers and hormones, or we remove them from your home and put them in an LGBT-friendly foster home.
Good evening. It's a story we have heard before, but this time it's playing out in a local courtroom. A teenager who wants to transition, but the parents are opposed.
Job and Family Services is seeking temporary custody of the teen or legal custody to someone else so the child does not have to go back home. In this story by Local 12's Deborah Dixon, we will not identify the teen.
The county agency argues the teen is not safe at home where parents deny the child is transgender. According to this complaint, the child wants to transition and has been seeing a therapist, but parents only want a Christian therapist.
When you put these little boys on puberty blockers, that blocks their puberty. They do not go into puberty, so they remain soft, tender, smooth, and young.
Physical changes to the body include softening of the skin, less muscle mass, beginning breast development, and decreased erections.
And then you go look up some of the characteristics of a pedophile, and one of their number one attractions is soft, smooth, tender boys. If people don't see that connection, it's because they don't want to see that connection. But for all these people that are handing their children and their grandchildren over to the LGBT movement, it's their fault that these children are being preyed upon. Because these are children. These are children. They don't know whether to scratch their watch or wind their backside. They can't vote. They can't go buy a beer. They can't go smoke a cigarette. They can't go to the nightclub. But they can choose their gender.
This isn't about tearing apart families. It's about making sure that children receive the sometimes life-saving health care that they need and that their doctors believe that they need.
She's not talking about the hormone treatments that Bayer and his group are upset about from the Hamilton court case. She's talking about mental health care for kids ready to give up.
We know that young people who are transgender or gender nonconforming are at increased risk for both suicide and self-harm and are at much greater risk than our other children in society.
Everyone always goes to the suicide rate. Well, we have to stop the suicide rate and accept them. Well, acceptance doesn't lower the suicide rate. It actually increases the suicide rate. And then once they start having surgical procedures and getting on hormones, the suicide rate goes up even higher.
What are the risks? The medical effects and safety of feminizing hormone therapy are not fully understood. There may be long-term risks that are not known yet. you have a risk of infertility because over time, estrogen can damage the cells that make sperm. However, it's important to continue to use birth control to prevent unwanted pregnancy. Some of the rare but more serious risks may include blood clots, high blood pressure, kidney and liver disease. Your doctor can help manage many of the known risks of feminizing hormone therapy by creating a hormone combination that is made just for you. There are also actions you can take to reduce the risks, including not smoking and having your blood tested as recommended by your doctor.
Yes, I took estrogen and progesterone. I now have irreversible breast growth. I had a number of health complications from this. I now have bone density problems. I've had kidney problems. And at one point, my mental health was so destabilized by the hormones that I had 2 stays in a psychiatric ward because of it.
In After the Ball and in the homosexual overhauling of straight America, it talks about if you are a pederast or a pedophile, then we have to disassociate with you for now. We ask that you not march with us in our fight, because America will not feel sympathy or pity for us if we're associated with child molesters. So NAMBLA, the National Association of Man-Boy Love, and all these other pederast groups fell silent. And now once the LGBTP population movement has rose up the way they have, see, in 71, in the American Psychiatric Association book, homosexual was considered a mental disorder. Now, mind you, it's not a mental disorder, it's a sin. So, but it was labeled a mental disorder, and that was when America saw it for the horrific monster that it was, for the beast that it was. But in 1972, because of the homosexuals and the perversion amongst the people on the board of the APA, they went and changed homosexual to a sexual orientation. So it's from 1972 on that they started laying out federal and state demands on what they wanted. And most of these demands were automatically met without any public notice, because they didn't want to have to deal with it in public. So rather than look like a bunch of narrow-minded fools, we'll just give them what they want. Many people don't have a clue that in 2012, the APA changed the wording for pedophile to mean a child-adult relationship, which is giving you that open door that they need. The LGBT movement has laid a foundation for their greater cause. And that foundation will legally protect them when they want your children and your grandchildren. The enemy knows that he's lost the war. He knows that he's lost the war. But he can win the battle if he can get his talents in your children and your grandchildren. Because if he can have all these people to die in their sin and to separate, they're severing their own connection with God. He doesn't have to do anything. Not only are we just opening up the door to our children being molested, being raped, passed around, profited off of, but we're handing them over to a movement that's going to turn them into pedophiles, rapists, murderers, drug addicts, alcoholics, prostitutes. And this is what we want for our next generation. I wouldn't want this for my worst enemy. The things that I endured, I wouldn't want for my worst enemy. And so if the whole focus is rescuing the children and saving the children, then we all had better wake up real quick and know that we're all focused on cleaning up what's already done. But we need to start focusing on stopping it before it happens to these children.
This is an indoctrination of a gay agenda that has no place in our schools. If you choose that lifestyle, it is your business, not my children.
That's right.
Amen. Not the children of the school. Your business. And keep it that way.
We have said enough is enough. And so right across the street here at the government building, we're going to be here at 5 p.m. in Charlotte, North Carolina, saying we are done. You're going to get this LGBT propaganda and graphic sex ed out of our schools, or we're pulling the children out permanently.
My name is David Arthur, and I may not know you, but your eternal salvation concerns me.
When we as a society, whether we realize it or not, try to obfuscate the truth about gender and seamlessly dissolve the boundaries that God initially established, we're trying to erase aspects and characteristics of God that he intended to reveal. You know, Absolutely. And this is not just a war on masculinity or femininity. This is a war against the character and nature of God, because we're trying to erase the boundaries that he has established for a specific reason. And so I would say very politely to the person asking that question as to why we're striving for gender roles, because God created them for his glory. This
Amen.
Is something that is intrinsically important and truthful.
Yeah, you know, it's a direct and deliberate attack against God's very intention of creation. So the homosexuality goes back before everything else. It goes back. It is a direct and deliberate attack to just God's very intention of creating one man and one woman, because one man, one woman equal one flesh. You know, I had a pastor ask me, he said, David, what do I tell the two men that come in and say, we just got married, we just moved here, and we're looking for a church home? He said, am I supposed to send them away? Am I supposed to turn my back on them? Or what do I do? But as we're driving by, Tom says, look at that sign. It says, let my children go, at this homosexual apostate church. So this apostate homosexual transgender church is flying the pride flag, and then on top of it, they're mocking God and twisting scripture, saying, let my children go. Let my children go, they're saying at the Reformed Church of the Ascension. Let my children go. And so I ask you, if Moses said, let my people go, then what is this apostate church saying? They're twisting scripture and they're letting the world know, we want your children. We want to make your children our children. So let my children go, because we want to get our talons into them. That's what this apostate church is saying. We are the church. So as the church, we bring truth, and we do it in love, because we love, and that's only possible because we were first loved. I am so thankful. I am so grateful that there wasn't any of these apostate churches, that there were none of these buildings with these false preachers and false teachers available to me when I was lost in that darkness. How can you claim to be a man of God but then try to find a way to wiggle your way around his truth and around his very intention of creation. I said, well, I tell them, sure, you can come to church, you can come gather, you can come fellowship with us. Absolutely. But I want you to understand that, one, you're not married. Two men can't get married. And two, you cannot and must not remain this way.
If anybody hears me or sees me, they're probably going to get upset, but guess what? Truth hurts, right? Truth sounds like hate. Hallelujah. And I think what we need to do is not pray for the leaders of this building because they know who they work for. But we need to pray for the congregation and that their blinders be removed, that they realize that they too won't be able to stand before the Lord. And they won't be able to say, God, my pastor misled me. He twisted the scripture. He mistaught me. He misquoted you. They won't be able to say that because they're going to be held responsible for their inactions as well as their actions.
I had a couple come up to me in North Carolina last year and they said, well, my son is 16. He identifies as a homosexual, has a mother and a father. We're both Christian. He was raised in a Christian home. What say you? I said, there's trauma. I got to speak to the boy with the parents present, and 15 minutes into speaking to him, he admitted that his uncle, his father's brother, who was a pastor, had molested him. You got these people, these parents that are embracing their children's transgenderism. Parents embracing their son's homosexuality and going out there and they're celebrating it with them marching down the street. This is about silencing God. When I see the sheets of all the genders that they're teaching in schools right now, it says non-heterosexual. We are heterosexual by design because that's God's good creation. So to be non-heterosexual means to be outside of God's good creation. No God. That's what they're teaching, that there's no God. And every single time somebody says, well, who am I to judge who they can love and who they can't love? They're saying, well, I'm just going to separate myself from God because God doesn't know what he's talking about. And see, and that was back in my day, okay? But right now, they don't have to be recruited or molested into this movement because they're being taught and told that God made them that way, that they're created that way, that they're born that way, and nobody is born that way because it's unnatural, it's in direct opposition to God. But if they want to believe they were born that way, Jesus said, be born again. If they think that this is who they are, and this is what they are, and this is who their self, Jesus said, deny self. We have to reach out to everybody. You know, something that hit me within the last couple Pride events that we've been going to is that dealing with them on a one-on-one basis, we're embraced by them.
Before you move on and not listen to me, let me just say that through homosexuality, prostitution, rape, transgenderism, being stabbed, shot at, physically abused, mentally abused, through jail, prison, HIV to AIDS, from being on my deathbed, through homelessness and so much more. Through all that, here I am today to let you know that there's a way out.
It's very important that we understand that in Revelations, the blood, it says that they, meaning the world, and the overcomers will overcome him, meaning the enemy, by the blood of the Lamb, Jesus Christ, and the power of our testimony. And so we all have a testimony. So if we introduce them to Jesus and bring our testimony, and everybody has a testimony. So we can all relate to somebody at a homosexual pride festival because they're not just homosexual. They're guilty of other sins. We're called to be fishers of men. We catch them, he cleans them. We catch them with the power of our testimony, and then he cleans them with the blood, his blood. It's the blood that cleans them. We don't do that. We're only called, we have a twofold commission, evangelize and disciple. That's it. That's our commission. And when we do that, all we're supposed to be doing is planting and watering. That's it. He'll cause the increase. So I say to the church to go out into the streets. Stop waiting for them to walk through your doors on Sunday morning. Go out into the streets, go out to them and speak to them. Associate with them, reach out to them, but don't accept, condone, affirm, confirm, or celebrate their sin.
There is no such thing as transgender. If you are a man and you lay with another man, you are guilty of the sin of homosexuality. We are designed in one sexual orientation, and that's heterosexuality, because it's defined from the very beginning of creation as one man and one woman.
If I was not offended, if I was not hurt, if I was not angered, I wouldn't be here today. I'd be physically and spiritually dead, gone. We have to stop trying to tiptoe or walk on eggshells or appease everybody and worry about if we're going to hurt their feelings or not, or what are they going to think, or if I talk about homosexuality being a sin, I know that family right there has a homosexual son. They may walk out and they're going to take their wallet with them, and there goes my tithe. And we're not in this for a tithe. If you're in ministry for money, you're in the wrong job. It's about the rewards of knowing that you told somebody the truth in love, that you offended them, because the truth really does sound like hate to those who hate the truth. It just does. The reason I show the pictures of the old me is because I want people to understand it doesn't matter. There's no such thing as too far gone. Because a lot of people called me a reprobate. A lot of people said I was too far gone. I don't beat them upside the head with the Bible because they don't understand the Word of God, because they don't have the Spirit of God within them to help them to understand the words of God. So I just tell them the truth. It's my own experiences that they can relate to. When I tell them about me, I'm telling them about them. They relate to that. When I tell them that there's freedom, that there really is happiness and joy, the same joy that they're seeking, and then I tell them where they're seeking it and how they're looking for it and why they're not finding it, that gets them thinking, you know. But I make it clear to them, I don't want to be your friend. I don't want to be your friend. I want to be your brother.
One thing you're not going to hear about is the truth of where that road led me. And it led me to my deathbed. Full-blown AIDS, infections in my brain, in my blood, no hope. The doctor said, look, you don't even need to take these medications anymore because there's no hope for you. They put a hospital bed in my bedroom at home and put hospice in place. And it was then that I reached out to the Lord. It was then that I picked up the word. It was then that I called out to Jesus. And he rescued me. And he's healed me. Not undetectable as in still positive, undetectable as in negative. He's healed me. That's the power of the cross. That's the power of Jesus Christ.
There is nothing like having freedom in Jesus. Nothing like it.
everything he does is out of his heart. I can't say, like when I talk to David and I talk to him about something, he's going to give me good advice, and he's not going to sugarcoat it, and he's going to give me words of wisdom and spiritual, response with, biblical verses if I need it. He's a God-loving man now, and I'm so proud of you, brother.
My email address and my website is in that book. And if you feel the need, I live in Ohio now, but if you feel the need, you reach out to me, okay? I love you. I do. All right.
God bless you. Thank you for talking to us.
Oh, man. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah.
He just amazes me. I don't know what pushed him. I didn't push him to the Bible. I didn't push him toward God. In all his pain and all his suffering, I didn't push him toward God. I didn't even turn to God. So, that's like something that I think of Paul on that road to Damascus. You're going to listen to me. Now I got your attention.